Somebody call for help! Please, anybody!
The examination hall doors were closing in 40 minutes when Zainab saw the old woman hit the road. 1 second, Mrs. Ronka Coca was crossing beside the traffic. The next, a motorcycle struck her. People shouted. Cars slowed. Phones came out, but nobody touched her. Zainab looked at the woman bleeding on the roadside. Then at the examination slip clenched inside her hand. This was her final paper. Miss it, and graduation could disappear. Her job opportunity could disappear with it. "Somebody call for help," she shouted. Nobody moved fast enough. So Zainab dropped her bag. And with that one decision, the future she had spent years building began to fall apart. Hours later, when she finally reached campus, the examination was already underway. The lecturer at the door looked at her dusty clothes and said coldly, "You made your choice. Every choice has consequences." He had no idea how painfully true those words would become. And months later, the consequence nobody expected would return to that same university. Stay with this story, because what happened next was not about luck. It was about the price of doing the right thing. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and your local time right now. And if stories about dignity, courage, and real human choices speak to you, subscribe and stay with us. Because Zainab's hardest decision had already been made. She just didn't know what it would cost. That morning had begun with boiled yam, weak tea, and her father's voice note playing from a phone, balanced against a chipped plastic cup. "My daughter, no stories today. Finish this paper. Come out of that school. Let us rest." Zainab smiled, even though nobody was there to see it. Her room was small enough that she could touch the wardrobe from the edge of the bed. On the wall above her reading table, she had taped a page, torn from an old exercise book. It carried 3 lines written in blue ink. Final exam, transcript, work. That was the plan, not a dream. Zainab did not like calling things dreams when there were fees attached to them. She had spent 4 years studying environmental health. She had learned how small failures became large ones. A blocked exit, a missing record, a hand that did not wash properly before touching food, an electrical cable left exposed because everybody assumed somebody else would report it. Most disasters, one lecturer liked to say, began as something somebody considered too small to bother about. Zainab had written that sentence down during her 2nd year. She had never imagined it would come back to her on the morning of her final paper. She dressed carefully. Tangerine orange blouse, navy trousers, black flats. Her pale blue university lanyard sat against her chest. Into her cream canvas bag went 3 pens, her student identity card, a small bottle of water, a packet of tissue, and the examination slip she checked twice before leaving. Her roommate had traveled home after finishing her own papers 2 days earlier. The corridor outside was quiet. Somewhere downstairs, somebody's radio played a gospel song too loudly for that hour. Zainab locked the door, pulled once to confirm it, then checked the time. Good. If traffic behaved itself, she would reach campus early enough to sit under the almond tree behind the faculty building and breathe before entering the hall. Her father had mocked that habit. "You have been reading for 4 years. What do you still want to breathe about?" She had told him, "Daddy, breathing is free. Let me use it." He had laughed until he coughed. Bello repaired industrial sewing machines in a workshop outside Ibadan. He was good with metal, bad with invoices, and suspicious of any expense whose value he could not see with his eyes. Yet he had paid school fees before replacing his own leaking roof. That fact sat quietly behind everything Zainab did. She knew exactly how much this morning meant. By the time she reached the road leading toward campus, Ibadan had fully woken. Minibuses coughed smoke at junctions. Traders lifted shutters. A woman carrying bread balanced a tray on her head while arguing with a bus conductor, as if both tasks required the same part of the brain. Zainab walked fast. She had just passed a pharmacy when she noticed the elderly woman on the opposite side of the road. Violet Ankara dress, bright teal headscarf, a small handbag tucked beneath one arm. The woman stood near the edge, waiting for a gap in traffic. Zainab noticed her because the colors were impossible not to notice. Then, a delivery motorcycle tried to squeeze between a car and the roadside. The rider saw the woman late. His horn screamed. The woman turned. The motorcycle clipped her side. She went down hard. Her handbag flew open. A comb, a handkerchief, and a small packet of biscuits scattered across the road. The rider skidded, nearly fell, then managed to stop several meters away. For half a second, everything held. Then noise arrived. "Jesus! Madam, driver, where are you going? Catch him!" People moved toward the motorcycle rider first. Zainab moved toward the woman. She stepped into the road with one hand raised at an approaching car, shouting for the driver to stop. The driver braked and leaned on his horn. "Are you blind?" he shouted through the window. "There is somebody on the ground," Zainab shouted back. That ended the argument. She dropped her canvas bag beside the curb and knelt. The old woman was conscious, but confused. Her eyes moved without settling. There was a scrape near her temple and a deeper cut along her left forearm, where she had landed against rough concrete. "Ma, can you hear me?" Zainab asked. The woman's lips moved. "What happened?" "You were hit. Please don't stand up yet." "I'm fine." She tried to push herself up. Zainab placed a hand near her shoulder without forcing her down. "Please, Ma, just stay still for a moment." A young man crouched beside them. "Should we carry her?" "Not yet," Zainab said. "Let's make sure traffic is stopped first, and please call for medical help." He looked around. "You call. My phone is dead." "Of course it was." Zainab pulled out her phone. The battery icon was red, 19%. She called the emergency desk of the university clinic because it was the number she knew by memory from a first aid awareness program she had attended the previous year. The clinic was not far from where the accident happened. A staff member answered. Zainab gave the location, described the woman's condition as carefully as she could, and was told a response vehicle would be sent if available. "If available?" she repeated. "We are dispatching someone. Keep her still and don't give her food or drink until she is assessed." Zainab looked at the time. She swallowed. The examination hall was still possible. Barely. A woman from a nearby shop brought a clean folded cloth. Zainab used it to apply steady pressure to the cut on the old woman's forearm. She did not touch the scrape near the head. "Ma, what is your name?" "Ronk. Mrs. Ronk? Coca. Okay, Mrs. Coca. My name is Zainab. Just keep looking at me." The old woman blinked. "You are wearing orange." Zainab almost laughed. "Yes, ma. Very loud orange." "That is good. Keep insulting my blouse. It means you are talking." Ronke made a weak sound that might have been a laugh. Behind them, the motorcycle rider had returned. Two men were shouting at him. One wanted to seize his bike key. Another wanted money immediately. Zainab ignored all of it. Her world had narrowed to a bleeding forearm, an old woman's unfocused eyes, and the clock on her phone. 32 minutes. She could leave. The thought came plainly. She had already called for help. Other people were there. Nobody would blame her for going. Nobody reasonable, anyway. She looked toward the road to campus. Then Ronki's fingers closed around her wrist. Not hard. Just enough. "Please don't leave me." That was all. Zainab looked down at the examination slip inside the open mouth of her bag. Then she turned the bag over so the paper would not blow away. "I'm here," she said. The response vehicle arrived much later than Zainab wanted it to. It was a small clinic van with a nurse and an attendant, not a miracle with flashing lights. They assessed Ronke, stabilized her enough for transport, and asked who had witnessed the accident. Several people suddenly became very busy. Zainab raised her hand. "I did. Are you family?" the nurse asked. "No." The nurse looked at her. "You can give us your contact details. We'll take her." Ronke's grip tightened again. "My bag," she murmured. Zainab gathered the scattered things and returned them to the handbag. When she tried to hand it over, Ronke would not take it. "You hold it." The nurse glanced at Zainab's lanyard. "You are a student?" "Yes." "Do you need to go?" Zainab looked at the time. 20 minutes. "Yes." The word came out too quickly. She stood. Then Ronke vomited. The nurse's face changed. "Let's move now." Zainab's stomach dropped. The nurse asked her to come along at least, to give a clear account, because Ronke was confused and had no relative present. Zainab climbed into the van. As the doors shut, she sent one message to a coursemate. "Accident near campus. I'm with an injured woman. Tell Dr. Bode I'm coming." The message showed 1 tick, then 2. She stared at it as if 2 ticks could become permission. They did not. At the hospital, everything took longer than urgency wanted it to. A receptionist asked questions. The nurse repeated details. Ronke was moved through assessment. Zainab gave her name and number because she was the person who had arrived with the patient. A staff member wrote down the approximate accident time. Zainab kept checking the clock. 10 minutes to the exam. 5, start time. Her coursemate called. "Zainab, where are you?" "Hospital." "Your paper has started." "I know, I told one of the assistants." Dr. Bode said late entry follows the rule. He didn't say anything else. "Please tell him I'm coming." "I told him." "Tell him again." There was a pause. "I will." Zainab ended the call. She stood at the edge of the waiting area, looking at the door through which Ronke had disappeared. A cleaner pushed a mop around her shoes. "Sorry," Zainab said, and moved. The cleaner looked at the ID card on her chest. "You have exam?" Zainab nodded. "Ah." That was all, the woman said. Sometimes one syllable had enough room inside it for an entire disaster. A nurse eventually came out and told Zainab that Ronke was being evaluated and that staff had her details. The old woman was conscious. They were trying to reach family through the contacts in her phone. "You can go," the nurse said. Zainab did not thank her. There was no time. She ran. By the time she reached the university gate, the back of her blouse was damp with sweat. Her black flats slapped the pavement. Her lanyard bounced against her chest. She tried to call her coursemate again. Her phone died. "Of course," she muttered. She kept running. Past the library. Past the faculty office. Up the stairs. The examination hall doors were closed. A temporary sign had been taped outside. "Examination in progress. Silency." Zainab stopped so hard that pain shot through the arch of her right foot. A junior staff member sitting near the entrance looked up. "My exam," she said. He looked at the wall clock. "You are very late." "I know. Please." "There was an accident. Wait." He opened the door only enough to slip inside. Through the gap, Zainab saw rows of heads bent over answer booklets. Her seat was in there, her empty seat. The door closed again. She stood alone in the corridor, breathing through her mouth. When Dr. Bodadeyemi came out, he was wearing the cobalt blue shirt she had seen him wear during revision week. Sleeves buttoned, pen clipped neatly into the pocket. He looked exactly like a man whose morning had followed instructions. Zainab's had not. "Sir," she began. He lifted one hand. "I have been told there was an accident." "Yes, sir. An elderly woman was hit. I had to. What time did you arrive?" "Just now." He looked at the wall clock. "That is not what I asked." Zainab gave the time. He pressed his lips together. Then you are outside the permitted entry window. Sir, I have proof. The hospital can confirm. I called the clinic. They took her. This is not about whether something happened. Then please let me write. I cannot admit you after this amount of time. Sir, I have not spoken to anybody inside. I don't even know the questions. That is not the only issue. Search me. Take my phone. It is dead anyway. His eyes flicked to the dust on her trousers, then to the darker patch where Ronka's blood had touched the cloth she had used, and then her sleeve. For one moment, Zainab thought his face softened. It did not. If I open that door for you now, I am creating another problem inside the hall. My graduation depends on this paper. I know. My job depends on my transcript. That is unfortunate. The word landed badly. Unfortunate. As if rain had spoiled a picnic. Zainab lowered her voice because students were writing on the other side of the door. Sir, I did not oversleep. I did not miss a bus. Somebody was injured. And there were other people there. Yes, then you made a decision to remain. She stared at him. He continued, still quiet. I am not saying your reason is meaningless. I am saying choices have consequences. You made your choice. Every choice has consequences. For the first time that morning, Zainab wanted to shout. She did not. She opened her bag, pulled out the examination slip, and held it between them. What should I do now? Dr. Bode looked at the paper. Submit a petition through the department. Attach whatever documentation you have. There is a process. Will I be allowed to write another paper? I cannot promise you that. Sir, I cannot promise what is not mine to promise. That answer was technically fair. It still felt like a slap. The junior staff member looked away. Zainab folded the examination slip once, then again. Thank you, sir. She walked downstairs before her legs could decide otherwise. Outside the faculty building, the almond tree was exactly where it had always been. That was where she had planned to sit before the exam and breathe. She sat beneath it now. No exam, no battery, no plan. Students passed at a distance, whispering because they knew a paper was in progress nearby. Zainab put her face in her hands. She did not cry immediately. First, she noticed dirt under her fingernails, then a brown streak near the cuff of her orange blouse. Then the fact that one of her 3 pens had cracked inside the bag and leaked blue ink across the examination slip. That was when her eyes filled. The absurdity of it. 4 years of lectures, practicals, assignments, field visits, group work, cheap noodles, borrowed textbooks, and nights when power disappeared halfway through reading. And the paper she had protected all morning now had a blue stain across her name. Her coursemate came out after the exam nearly 2 hours later. Simi was smiling before she saw Zainab. Then the smile vanished. You are still here? Zainab nodded. How is the woman? Alive. They were treating her. Simi sat beside her. Dr. Bode did not let you in? No, ha. Please don't say ha. What should I say? I don't know. Simi looked at the folded examination slip in Zainab's hand. The paper was not easy. Zainab turned her head slowly. Simi covered her mouth. Sorry. That was stupid. It was. They sat in silence. After a while, Simi said, You will petition. Yes, they will understand. Zainab looked at the building. Will they? She borrowed Simi's phone and called her father. Musa answered on the 3rd ring. Finished. Zainab closed her eyes. Daddy. Something in her voice made him stop breathing loudly into the phone. What happened? She told him. Not all at once. There was no way to tell it all at once. She began with the accident. The old woman, the clinic, the hospital, the closed examination hall. Musa listened without interrupting until she reached Dr. Bode's refusal. Then he said, So you did not write. Know how much of the exam time had passed? More than the allowed late entry period. Zainab. I know. No. Answer me. You saw other people at the accident? Yes. Adults? Yes. People with phones? Yes. People with cars? Yes. She knew where he was going. She hated that he had a point. So why, Musa asked carefully, did it have to be you? Zainab rubbed her forehead. Daddy, nobody was doing what needed to be done. But after you called the clinic? She asked me not to leave. Silence. She could hear workshop noise behind him. Metal hitting metal. Somebody calling for a spanner. Musa spoke more quietly. My daughter, helping somebody is good. Very good. God knows I am not saying leave a person to die. But your future. All these years. I know, your mother would have. He stopped. Zainab's hand tightened around the phone. Her mother had died when Zainab was 14. Musa rarely used her in arguments because he knew it was unfair. This time, he had almost done it. He cleared his throat. Come home after you finish whatever you need to do there. Daddy, I have to start the petition today. Then start it. He paused. Is the woman alive? Good. Another pause. Then at least let that be good. The call ended. Zainab handed Simi back her phone. What did he say? Simi asked. Zainab stood. He asked the question everybody will ask. What question? Why did it have to be me? That question followed her into the departmental office. It followed her while she explained the incident to a secretary, who kept glancing at a queue of students behind her. It followed her when she was given a petition form and told to attach evidence. Evidence. The word steadied her. Evidence was something she understood. She had made a call. There would be a record on her phone account when the phone was charged. The clinic had dispatched a vehicle. The hospital had registered Ronke's arrival. There were witnesses. There was a way to build a timeline. For the first time since she had seen the examination hall door close, Zainab had something to do besides regret. She went back to her room, plugged in her phone, and waited until the screen came alive. 3 missed calls from an unknown number, 1 from her father, 2 messages from Simi, and a message from the same unknown number. Good afternoon. This is Ronke Koka's daughter. My mother is stable. She gave us your name. Thank you for staying with her. Please call when you can. Zainab read it twice. Stable. She sat on the edge of the bed. Her father's question came again. Why did it have to be you? She looked at the message. Because somebody had to stay. That answer did not restore her exam. It did not restore the morning. But for that night, it was enough to let her sleep. The next day, reality became less philosophical. The departmental secretary told her that a missed final examination was not a small matter. She could submit her petition, yes. The department would review it. Depending on the university regulations and the decision of the appropriate academic body, the outcome might be a deferred sitting, a carryover, or another arrangement. Please don't write another arrangement, Zainab said. What does that mean? The secretary adjusted her glasses. It means I am not the person who decides, Zainab exhaled. Everybody keeps telling me what they cannot decide. That is because everybody has a level of authority. The woman's voice was not unkind. Write your petition well. Don't write 10 pages of emotion. State what happened. State what you are asking for. Attach evidence. That advice would prove more useful than sympathy. Zainab spent the afternoon making a list. Accident time. Call to university clinic. Clinic response vehicle. Hospital arrival. Hospital registration. Coursemate message sent before examination. Faculty arrival. She wrote each item on a sheet of paper and drew a line between them. In her course, she had done incident reconstruction exercises. They were usually about contaminated water, workplace exposure, drainage failures, unsafe waste disposal. Now she was reconstructing herself. The clinic confirmed that a call had been received from her number, and that a patient had been picked up near campus. They would not give her another person's medical information, but they could confirm her call and the response. Good. The hospital would not simply hand her Ronke's records either. Good. It should not. But Ronke's daughter agreed to request a brief letter confirming the date and time of admission, and that Zainab had accompanied her mother. A roadside shopkeeper gave Zainab her number and said she had seen the accident. The motorcycle rider had left after giving details to people at the scene. Zainab did not need him to prove her absence from the exam, so she did not chase that line. By the third day, she had a folder. Not a dramatic folder. No secret recording. No hidden photograph. Just ordinary records made because ordinary institutions had done ordinary things. That mattered. She wrote her petition in plain language. I respectfully request consideration for a deferred sitting for my final examination paper, which I missed. After providing immediate assistance to an injured elderly woman near the university, and accompanying her during emergency transfer, when no relative was present. Then she stated the timeline, then the evidence, then the consequence. She deleted 2 paragraphs where she had written about morality. The secretary had been right. The facts were enough. When she submitted the petition, Dr. Bode happened to be in the office. He saw her folder. "You have documentation?" he asked. "Yes, sir." Good. The word irritated her. Good. As if he had not left her under a tree with an unused examination slip. She kept her face still. "Sir, do you think they will approve it?" He did not answer immediately. "That is not for me alone to decide." She almost laughed. Of course. Nobody decided anything alone. That was either the protection of a system or the hiding place of one. She was not yet sure which. A week later, an email arrived requesting clarification and additional documentation. 2 weeks after that, another email arrived, informing her that her case remained under review, and that she should not assume a special sitting had been approved. By then, graduation lists were beginning to circulate among students. Simi's name was there. Zainab's was not. She stared at the list on her phone until the letters blurred. Then she put the phone face down and went to wash a plate that was already clean. Her father called that evening. "I saw the list," he said. "How?" "Your auntie sent it to me." Zainab closed her eyes. Of course, her auntie had sent it. Nothing moved through a Nigerian family faster than information somebody hoped you had not yet seen. "Daddy, the petition is still under review. You told me. I will finish." "I know." But he did not sound like a man discussing certainty. He sounded like a man adding another column to a bill. Her accommodation lease would end soon. The small graduate trainee position she had been shortlisted for required evidence that she had completed her degree before resumption. She emailed the company to explain. Their reply was polite. They could not hold the position indefinitely. There was no villain in that email. That somehow made it worse. For 3 days, Zainab carried the message around inside her without telling her father. Then Musa called and asked, "When are you resuming the job?" She sat on the floor beside her bed. They released the position. Silence. How? "My transcript is not ready because I have not completed the paper." "How long will this thing take?" "I don't know," Musa breathed out slowly. "I have school fees for your brother next month." Zainab pressed her thumb against a crack in the floor tile. "I know. I am not blaming you." The sentence was too quick. He was blaming her a little. Maybe she was blaming herself too. "Daddy, you can say what you want to say. What do you want me to say? That you think I was foolish. I think you are my daughter. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have that will not make both of us angry." She smiled despite herself. Musa continued. "I am proud you did not leave an old woman on the road. I am angry that the world has made me calculate the cost of that pride. Both things are true." Zainab looked at the orange blouse hanging from a nail near the wardrobe. She had washed the blood out. A faint, darker mark remained at the cuff. Both things are true, she repeated. Yes. That night, she unfolded the blue-stained examination slip. On the back, she wrote another list. Rent, food, transport, brother's fees, work. She needed income. The next morning, she began looking. Finding work without a completed degree was a lesson nobody had included in Zainab's course handbook. Every vacancy seemed to want one of two things: experience she did not yet have, or a certificate she could not yet show. She applied anyway. Graduate trainee roles, laboratory assistant openings, health and safety internships, a short-term community sanitation project, 2 environmental consulting firms that never replied, a food company that sent an automated rejection before she had finished feeling hopeful. During the day, she searched. At night, she refreshed the university portal. Nothing. On the 5th day, Mrs. Grace Daniels from Student Affairs called. Miss Bello? Yes, ma. My office received a copy of your petition because it involves an examination absence connected to an emergency. Can you come tomorrow morning? Zainab sat straighter on the bed. Has it been approved? No. Her shoulders dropped. Grace continued. I said, come tomorrow. I did not say celebrate tonight. That voice was dry enough to make Zainab smile. Yes, ma. Grace Daniels' office was smaller than Zainab expected. 2 filing cabinets took up more space than 1 visitor chair deserved. Grace wore an ivory blouse beneath a burgundy jacket, even though the fan was turning slowly and the afternoon was warm. She read Zainab's petition with a pencil in hand. You wrote this yourself? Yes. Ma, good. You did not write nonsense. Zainab blinked. Grace looked up. That is praise. Accept it. Yes, ma. Grace tapped the page. You have a reasonable evidence trail. Your call to the clinic. Their dispatch note. The hospital's confirmation. A witness contact. Your message to a coursemate before the paper. These do not prove every second of your morning, but they support the central fact that you were dealing with an emergency during the examination window. So, they can let me write? I did not say that. Zainab leaned back. Grace's mouth twitched. You young people want every useful sentence to end with your preferred answer. Ma, this answer is my graduation. I know. Grace turned the file around so Zainab could see a marked paragraph. Your department's concern is not only whether you are telling the truth, it is also what rule applies after a student misses a final paper. They are asking whether there is already a mechanism that can cover your case without creating a one-person examination by sympathy. By sympathy? That is how institutions speak when they are frightened of discretion. Zainab stared at her. Grace continued. And sometimes they should be frightened. If you create an exception badly, everybody with a story will demand the same thing. My story happened. I believe your records show something happened. That is not the same as telling an institution to stop asking questions. Zainab sat back. She had expected Student Affairs to be on her side. Grace was not on anybody's side. That made her more useful. What should I do? Zainab asked. Answer the questions they ask. Keep copies of everything. Do not insult anybody in writing, even if they deserve to be insulted in your head. And do not confuse delay with final rejection. How long? I cannot tell you. Zainab laughed once. Grace raised an eyebrow. Sorry, Ma. Everybody says that. Because time is one of the ways institutions remind you that they are larger than you. That is not comforting. I am not paid to be comforting. Grace closed the file. Who is the woman? Mrs. Ronk-Coker. Relative? No? Somebody important? Zainab hesitated. I don't know. Grace looked unimpressed. It does not matter. Your case should not become stronger because she is important. It should become stronger because the emergency is verifiable. That sentence stayed with Zainab. Your case should not become stronger because she is important. 2 days later, Zainab finally visited Ronke. The address took her to a quiet street where rain had eaten shallow holes into the road. There was no gatehouse, no black SUV, no line of security men pretending not to stare. A girl of about 16 opened the pedestrian gate and shouted into the compound, "Mummy, that sister has come!" A woman in her 30s rushed out and hugged Zainab before properly greeting her. "You are Zainab?" "Yes, I'm Dare's, sorry, I'm Mrs. Coker's daughter." She laughed at herself. "My name is Bissy. Come inside." The house was comfortable but ordinary. Plastic flowers on a side table. Family photographs in mismatched frames. A television with a cloth draped over the top. A faint smell of menthol rub and stew. Ronke sat in an armchair near the window. Her teal headscarf was gone. Her grey hair had been braided back neatly. The violet Ankara dress had been replaced by a loose house gown. A bandage still covered part of her forearm. When she saw Zainab, her whole face changed. "Orange girl," Zainab laughed. "You remember the blouse? I remember insulting it. That was how I knew you were still with us." Ronke held out her good hand. Zainab took it. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Ronke asked, "Your examination?" Zainab's smile thinned. "I missed it." Ronke's has stopped moving around hers. "What do you mean you missed it?" "I got there late. They did not let me in. You told me you had somewhere to go." "I did. You said school." "Yes, you did not say examination. There was no point telling you while you were injured." Ronke stared at her. Bissy, standing near the doorway, slowly sat down. "Which examination?" Ronke asked. "My final paper." The old woman's mouth opened, then closed. She looked toward her daughter. "Bissy, Mummy, did you know? She told me on the phone after you came home, and you did not tell me. You were in pain." Ronke turned back to Zainab. "You missed your final examination because of me. Because of the accident. Do not clean the sentence for me." Zainab looked down. Ronke released her hand and pressed her own palm against her forehead. "I was a principal for 28 years. Zainab looked up. "A school principal?" "Secondary school, government school, first. Private school later. 28 years telling children that examination time is examination time. No excuses. No stories." A bitter little laugh escaped her. "See life." Bissy reached for her shoulder. "Mummy, she has submitted a petition." Ronke looked at Zainab. "Will they allow you?" "I don't know yet." "What can I do? You already gave the hospital permission to confirm I came with you. That helps." "No." "What can I do?" Zainab understood the difference. "Nothing else right now." Ronke's jaw tightened. "I can go to the school." "Please don't. I can speak to somebody." "Ma, who?" Ronke opened her mouth. Nothing came. Zainab almost smiled, but stopped herself. Ronke Coker was not secretly connected to the vice-chancellor. She did not own a company. She had no powerful son waiting in Abuja. Her daughter worked at an insurance office. Her son lived in Ibadan and called twice during Zainab's visit to ask whether his mother was taking her medication. There was no hidden door in the story. Only people. Ronke lowered her voice. "I can pay whatever you lost." Zainab stiffened. "No, Ma. Your transport, your extra rent. Anything. No. Why?" "Because I did not stay on that road, so you would owe me." "I know. That is why I owe you." Zainab sat back. Ronke reached for a small envelope on the side table. Bissy said, "Mummy has been keeping that thing since yesterday." Ronke held it out. "Take it." Zainab did not move. "Ma, it is not a fortune. Do not insult me by behaving as if I am trying to buy your life. I'm not." "Then take it." Zainab shook her head. "I can't." "You can, I won't." Ronke stared at her long enough that Bissy looked between them like somebody watching a tennis match. Finally, Ronke put the envelope back on the table. "You are stubborn. My father says so. Your father is correct. They both laughed. Then Ronke's face changed again. Zainab. Yes, ma. You saved me. But I cannot give you your examination back. The room went still. It was the first time somebody had said the truth without trying to soften it. Zainab nodded. I know. Ronke looked toward the window. For the rest of the visit, they spoke about ordinary things. Ronke's years as a principal, Zainab's course, the trouble of getting students to take sanitation exercises seriously, BC's habit of buying too many shoes, the way Ronke hated hospital food. When Zainab stood to leave, Ronke held her hand again. If they ask me what happened, I will tell them exactly what happened, nothing more. That is what I need. Nothing more. Nothing more. Ronke nodded slowly. Good girl. On the way home, Zainab realized something that made her angry with herself. A small part of her had expected Ronke to be someone. Not because Ronke had behaved like a wealthy person. She had not. Because stories had trained everybody to believe sacrifice should reveal a prize, a powerful family, a check, a job, a connection. But the woman had been a retired school principal with medicine on her table and a daughter who worried too much. That should have been enough. Zainab leaned her head against the bus window. The glass was hot. Would she have stopped if she had known? Yes. That answer came quickly. She was glad it did. The first formal decision on her petition arrived 3 days later. It was not the answer she wanted. The department acknowledged that she had presented credible evidence of an emergency. However, it did not have a scheduled mechanism for an immediate special examination outside approved assessment arrangements. Her case would require further review before any deferred sitting could be authorized. In practical terms, she would not graduate with her cohort. Zainab read the message once. Then again. Then a third time because the first two had not changed it. Simi called. I heard. How? People talk. People should find jobs. You first. Zainab laughed despite herself. Simi lowered her voice. I'm sorry. Don't be. Go and prepare for graduation. I can skip it. Why? So you won't feel bad. That will make me feel worse. Go and wear your gown. Are you sure? No, but go. The call ended. Zainab sat at her table and opened her laptop. The job search page was still there. She typed temporary health and safety assistant, Ibadan. This time, something appeared. A distribution warehouse on the industrial side of the city needed short-term support for its health, safety, and environment desk. The role was not glamorous. The pay was modest. It required basic knowledge of incident reporting, workplace inspection, and documentation. Zainab read the description twice. Then she applied. The interview was 3 days later. The warehouse smelled of cardboard, diesel, and the kind of dust that settled into shoe seams. Forklifts moved between stacked goods. Men in reflective vests shouted instructions over reversing alarms. The interviewer, a broad-shouldered supervisor named Tayo, looked at Zainab's CV. You have not graduated. Not yet. Final result problem? Missed one examination. Administrative review is ongoing. Why did you miss it? Zainab considered lying by omission. She did not. I stopped to assist an injured woman after a road accident. I arrived too late to enter the examination hall. Tayo looked up. You missed final exam because you were doing Good Samaritan? Yes, he leaned back. That was either very brave or very unwise. I've heard both. Tayo's mouth lifted. What did you do at the scene? Zainab told him. Not dramatically. Call for help. Keep the injured woman still. Apply pressure to a bleeding arm wound. Avoid giving food or drink. Transfer information to medical staff. Preserve a basic timeline afterward. Tayo tapped the CV. You attended first aid training? Basic training only. I am not a medic. Good. People who know small things sometimes like to become doctor. I know what I don't know. That is useful in safety. He asked her about incident reporting. She answered. He asked what she would do if a supervisor told her to ignore a minor hazard, because production was busy. She paused. First, I would determine whether it is actually minor. Tayo nodded. And if it is? Document it and correct it at the lowest practical level without turning every loose cable into a board meeting. He smiled. And if it is not? Then production being busy is not a reason to leave it. Tayo closed the file. When can you start? Zainab blinked. Monday. Good. She left the warehouse with a temporary contract in her bag. The pay would not replace the graduate trainee opportunity she had lost. It would cover rent. It would cover transport. It would reduce what Musa had to send. That was enough to make her stand beside the road, outside the warehouse, and breathe until a bus conductor shouted, "Sister, are you going or not?" She climbed in. Musa did not celebrate when she told him. He asked the pay first, then the hours, then the transport cost, then whether the work was safe. Zainab laughed. Daddy, I'm working in safety. That does not answer whether the work is safe. Fair point. His voice softened. So you will manage? Yes. And the school? Still reviewing. Musa made a sound through his teeth. Everything is review. Zainab smiled. I know. Her first week at the warehouse taught her another kind of patience. University had made procedures look clean on paper. Workplaces had corners. A fire extinguisher could be present and still be blocked by cartons. A first aid box could be mounted on the wall and still contain expired antiseptic and 2 lonely bandages. An emergency exit could be marked with a bright sign and then become useless because somebody parked a pallet in front of it for just 5 minutes. On Tuesday, Zainab noticed the first aid box. She opened it, frowned, and wrote down what was missing. A storekeeper saw her. Sister, nobody has died. She looked at him. Is that the standard? He laughed. You safety people like trouble. No. Trouble likes people who don't prepare. He raised both hands. Write your report. She did on Wednesday. She saw a stack of cartons narrowing the path to an emergency exit. She asked the loader responsible to move them. He pointed toward a supervisor. Oga said, keep them there until the next truck comes. Zainab found Tayo. The exit route is partially blocked. For how long? I was told until the next truck. That truck will be here in 1 hour. Zainab waited. Tayo looked at her. What? If there is an emergency in that 1 hour, will you explain to the fire that the truck was coming? He stared at her for a second, then shouted across the floor, move those cartons now. The loader gave Zainab a look that could have peeled paint. She helped him move the first 2 boxes. His expression changed. You will write me up and still carry box? I did not write you up. I reported a blocked exit. Same thing. No. She lifted another carton with him. People are not hazards. Conditions are hazards, he snorted. You people have grammar. Move the box. He laughed. By Friday, the first aid box had been restocked. Nobody applauded. That was fine. Safety work often looked like nothing had happened. The absence of drama was the result. 2 weeks later, something small did happen. A young worker sliced his palm on a damaged metal edge while opening packaging near the loading section. It was not life-threatening. No ambulance raced through the gate. Nobody fainted. But blood startled people. A co-worker grabbed a dirty rag from a bench. Zainab stopped him. Not that. She took the worker to the first aid point where the newly restocked supplies were available. A trained first aider cleaned and dressed the injury while Zainab helped record what had caused it. Tayo arrived midway through. What happened? Sharp damaged edge on a handling frame, Zainab said. Serious? Looks minor, but the first aider says he should get proper medical review because the cut is deep enough to need it. We have isolated the frame. Tayo looked toward the first aid box, then at Zainab. You restocked this thing. I reported it. Same difference. No, she said automatically. He laughed. Yes, yes. People are not hazards. Conditions are hazards. The injured worker winced and said, Madam, please let him finish laughing after they stop my blood. Everybody quieted. The moment stayed with Zainab because of how ordinary it was. No hero, no villain. A box had been empty. Somebody noticed the box was filled. Later, somebody needed it. That evening, Zainab sat at the HSE desk reviewing the incident form. Cause. Immediate action. Corrective action. Preventive action. She stopped writing. The words on the form looked different. Cause. Immediate action. Corrective action. Preventive action. Her own university case suddenly rearranged itself in her mind. The accident was not the problem the university needed to solve. The university could not stop accidents outside campus. The question was what happened when a real emergency collided with an examination rule. Immediate action. The student misses the paper. Corrective action. Review the individual case. Preventive action. Dot. Zainab put down her pen. Preventive action was where there was nothing. No clear pathway students could understand in advance. No defined evidence threshold she had been shown. No standard way to separate a genuine emergency from a convenient excuse, except discretion after the damage had happened. She pulled a sheet of scrap paper toward herself. Tayo walked past, then backed up. You are doing schoolwork on my table? Zainab looked up. Maybe. I'm paying you to prevent warehouse from burning. It is not burning. Because I hired you. Because we moved your cartons. He pointed at her. Troublemaker. He walked away. Zainab looked down again. At the top of the page, she wrote, Documented Emergency Examination Review. Then she crossed it out. Too stiff. She wrote, What would a fair emergency process need? Underneath, she listed 4 questions. Did the emergency occur during a relevant time window? Is there independent documentation? Can the student's involvement be verified without demanding private medical details they have no right to possess? Who reviews the case so one lecturer is not forced to make an improvised decision at the examination door? Zainab sat back. For weeks, she had been asking the university to make an exception for her. That evening, for the first time, she asked a different question. What if the real problem was that nobody had designed the exception properly? Her phone buzzed. An email from the university. She opened it. The department had completed its initial review. Her request for an immediate special sitting would not be approved at departmental level. The matter could be escalated through the appropriate academic review channel if she wished to pursue it further. Zainab stared at the screen. The old version of her would have cried first. This version reached for the scrap paper. At the bottom of the university email, she wrote one line, Then I will pursue it further. The next morning, Zainab went back to Grace Daniels. She carried the rejection letter in one hand and her scrap paper in the other. Grace read the letter first. You expected this possibility. I expected it. I still hate it. Reasonable. Zainab placed the scrap paper on the desk. Grace looked at it. What is this? A problem. I can see handwriting. Explain the problem. Zainab pulled the visitor chair closer. The department keeps saying they cannot create an exception based on a story because other students can also come with stories. Yes. They are right about that part. Grace leaned back. That is new. They are wrong about treating that as the end of the conversation. Grace's eyes dropped to the paper again. Zainab continued. In safety work, when an incident exposes a gap, you don't solve it by pretending the incident is impossible. You ask what control was missing. My case has evidence. Another case may not. So why not define what kind of evidence can trigger a review? Grace picked up the paper. Go on. Not automatic approval. Review. By whom? That is what I want to find out. Maybe the department plus student affairs. Maybe somebody from the examination office. I don't know the structure well enough. Good. Zainab paused. What is good that you said you don't know? Grace placed the paper flat on the desk. People ruin useful proposals by pretending expertise they do not have. Zainab nodded. I'm not trying to redesign the university. Good, because they may throw you out before you graduate. Zainab smiled. Grace picked up her pencil. Your first question is strong. Your third one needs work. Do not build a process that requires a student to obtain another person's confidential medical file. You were lucky Mrs. Coker cooperated. A student should not need access to a stranger's diagnosis to prove that an emergency happened. Zainab sat forward. So confirmation of attendance and time, not diagnosis. Exactly. Verification without unnecessary private details. Grace underlined something. And you need a fraud safeguard. I thought independent records were the safeguard. Partly. Also a statement that false documentation is subject to existing disciplinary rules. If you want people to listen, show them you understand what they are afraid of. Zainab wrote quickly. Grace watched her. What are you studying again? Environmental health. You people like forms. We like things that can be checked. Same thing. For the next hour, Grace did not write the proposal for her. She did something better. She kept asking questions. Who receives the first report? What happens if the emergency occurs too close to the examination for prior approval? What kind of evidence can exist afterward? How do you prevent a lecturer at the door from being forced to investigate a crisis while supervising an exam? How do you keep the process fair to students who arrived on time and followed the rules? How do you prevent compassion from becoming favoritism? By the time Zainab left, the page was covered with arrows and crossed-out phrases. Her case had not improved. Not yet. But her thinking had. That afternoon she called Ronke. Ma, I may need you to sign a witness statement. Ronke was silent for 2 seconds. Only now? I have been waiting to sign something dramatic. Zainab laughed. It will not be dramatic. Disappointing. It will say what you personally remember. Nothing more. I remember your blouse. Please leave my blouse out of the official record. Ronke laughed so loudly that Bissy shouted something in the background. Then the old woman became serious. What are they saying now? They did not approve an immediate sitting. Ronke inhaled. But there is another review route. I'm pursuing it. You are still fighting. Yes, good, Zainab hesitated. I'm also proposing a clearer emergency process. Ronke went quiet again. For yourself? For whoever comes after. There was a long pause. When Ronke spoke, her voice had changed. When I was a principal, a girl missed an internal examination because her younger brother had an asthma attack. Zainab waited. I refused her makeup test. Why? Because 3 other students had given false stories that term. One claimed burial. We later saw her at a birthday party in photographs. Ronke gave a small, humorless laugh. So when the 4th girl came, I heard the first 3 voices. What happened? Her mother came with hospital papers. I reversed the decision later. Zainab leaned against the wall beside her bed. Did you apologize? Ronke did not answer quickly. Not properly. That was honest, Ronke continued. I told her the rule had been misunderstood. Old people like passive voice when we are ashamed. Zainab smiled. Ma, it is true. What happened to the girl? She wrote the test. Passed. Life continued. Ronke sighed. But I remember her face when I first refused. You see, Zainab, rules can protect people. They can also protect the person using the rule from having to think. Zainab looked at the draft on her table. That is exactly the problem. No, Ronke said. The problem is not rules. The problem is pretending judgment can be removed from human life. Even a rule needs somebody to decide whether it applies. Zainab wrote that down after the call. Not because she planned to quote Ronke, because it was useful. Graduation day came before the review hearing did. Zainab had promised Simi she would attend. At 7 that morning, she nearly broke the promise. She stood in front of her wardrobe, with her hand on the orange blouse from the accident day. She had not worn it since. The bloodstain was faint now. You had to know where to look. She chose a different top, then changed her mind. She put on the orange blouse, not because she was trying to turn it into a symbol, because it was clean and she was tired of avoiding it. Campus was loud with families, gowns, photographs, and people saying congratulations before they had fully seen who they were speaking to. Simi spotted Zainab near the faculty lawn and screamed. "You came!" "Of course, you said you might not. I say many useless things when I'm sad." Simi pulled her into a hug, gown and all, then stepped back. "You wore the blouse." Zainab looked down. "So? The blouse. It is cloth, Simi. It is trauma cloth. Please go and graduate." They laughed. A photographer called Simi away. Zainab watched her friend stand between her parents while somebody adjusted the hood of her gown. Simi's mother kept wiping her cheeks and then pretending she was not crying. Zainab smiled for the photograph. Afterward, she slipped away behind the faculty building. The almond tree was still there. She had come to hate the tree for no reasonable reason. She stood beneath it for less than a minute before hearing footsteps. Dr. Bode. He had removed his academic cap and carried it in one hand. His cobalt blue shirt was hidden beneath ceremonial robes. He stopped when he saw her. "Miss Bello." "Good afternoon, Sirta. You came for your colleagues?" "Yes." He looked toward the noise on the lawn. "That is good." Zainab nearly asked him to stop calling things good. Instead, she said, "My review hearing has been scheduled." "I know. Will you be there?" "Yes." "Are you opposing it?" Bode looked at her fully now. "I will give my academic position. That sounds like yes. It sounds like exactly what I said." Zainab bit the inside of her cheek. He continued, "I have read your additional submission." "The proposal?" "Yes. What do you think?" He paused. "I think you are mixing two matters." "Which two?" "Your personal request and institutional policy. They are connected." "Connected is not the same as identical." "I know. Do you?" The question sharpened her. "Yes, sir. My case can be rejected and the policy problem can still exist. My case can be approved and the policy problem can still exist." Bode's expression changed slightly. "Then say that at the hearing." Zainab stared at him. Was that advice? He put the cap back on his head. "Do not assume everybody who disagrees with your remedy disagrees with your facts." "Sir, you told me I made my choice." "I did, and that every choice has consequences." "I remember what I said." She waited. He did not apologize. Instead, he said, "You were asking me, at an examination door, to make an immediate decision with incomplete information while I was responsible for the integrity of a paper already in progress." Zainab's jaw tightened. You could have said that without making it sound like helping her was the mistake. For the first time, Bode looked away. The cheering from the graduation lawn floated toward them. A family was chanting somebody's name. Bode rubbed the edge of his cap with one thumb. "That sentence was unnecessary," he said. "Not sorry, but not nothing." Zainab nodded. "Yes, sir, it was." He walked away. She stayed under the almond tree for another minute. Then Simi called her name from the lawn, and Zainab went back to take photographs. She smiled in them. Not all the smiles were forced. That mattered too. At the warehouse, the proposal grew in pieces. Zainab worked during her shift and wrote during breaks. She built a simple flow. Not a grand reform document. Report. Temporary status recorded. Evidence submitted within a defined period. Independent review. Decision under existing academic authority. No automatic entitlement. No lecturer forced to investigate at the hall door. No requirement to obtain another person's confidential diagnosis. False documentation handled under existing disciplinary rules. Tayo found her one afternoon reading the draft aloud under her breath. You are still fighting school? I'm improving them, without salary. Unfortunately, he pulled a chair over. Explain, Zainab did. Tayo listened longer than she expected. When she finished, he tapped the page. You are making incident escalation. Something like that. In this warehouse, if a small issue cannot be solved at one level, it goes to the next level with information attached. You want same thing? Yes. Then why are you writing like lawyer? Zainab looked at the page. What? This sentence. In circumstances where exigencies prevent contemporaneous notification. What is this? She covered her face. I was trying to sound serious. You sound sick! She laughed. Tayo crossed out half the sentence. Write the way you talk when you are angry. It is clearer. That may not be safe for university. You know what I mean? She did. That evening she rewrote the proposal in plain English. It became shorter and stronger. Musa visited her the following weekend. He arrived carrying a black nylon bag full of food Zainab had not asked for and complaints she had expected. You are too thin. I am the same size. You are working too much. I am working normal hours. Your room is hot. It has always been hot. The fan is making sound. The fan has always made sound. Musa looked at it suspiciously, as if the fan had recently joined a criminal gang. He wore a deep forest green kaftan. Grease remained under one thumbnail, despite the fact that he had clearly washed his hands before traveling. Zainab served him rice. He noticed papers spread across her table. What is this? My review proposal. You are writing policy now? Small one. Will it give you your exam? Maybe not. Musa stopped chewing. Then why? Because the problem is bigger than me. He put down his spoon. My daughter, please do not become one of those people who suffer and immediately start an organization. Zainab burst out laughing. I'm not starting an NGO. Good. We do not have money for banner. She laughed harder. Musa smiled, pleased with himself. Then his face settled. I am serious. Finish your school first. I'm trying. Then focus on your case. This is part of my case. You just said it may not help you. It shows I understand their concern. Musa wiped his fingers. I understand your concern too. Your brother's fees are due. Your rent is due. The job you had before is gone. You are now carrying boxes and writing reports in a warehouse. Forgive me if I want the thing that helps you first. Zainab's laughter disappeared. I am not carrying boxes for a living, Daddy. I did not say there is shame in carrying boxes. You said it like there is. I said you went to university for 4 years. And now I'm using what I studied. In temporary work. It is work. I know it is work. Then stop saying it as if I fell. Musa pushed his plate away. I did not say you fell. You keep talking like that morning ruined me. Did it improve your life? The words came out faster than he intended. Both of them heard it. Zainab stood. She carried his plate to the sink even though he was not finished. Musa rubbed both hands over his face. Zainab. She turned on the tap. Leave it, I am afraid. She stopped. He had never said that part so plainly. Musa looked at the table instead of at her. I know what 1 extra year can do. I know what 1 job lost can do. People who have cushion can say, at least she did the right thing. People without cushion calculate. We calculate everything. Zainab turned off the tap. I know. You think I am angry because you helped that woman. Aren't you? I am angry because helping her cost you more than it should have. The room became quiet. Musa tapped the papers. Maybe that is what you are trying to fix. Zainab looked at him. Yes. He pulled his plate back toward himself. Then let me finish my rice before it becomes policy too. She laughed. The argument did not disappear. Neither did the money problem. But something had shifted. A week later, Grace called. Your hearing date is confirmed. Zainab stood from the HSE desk so quickly her chair rolled backward. When? Next Thursday. Who will be there? An academic review panel. Examination administration. Departmental representation. Student affairs, you and Dr. Bode. Yes. Zainab's mouth went dry. Grace continued. Mrs. Coker may attend only for the portion where factual clarification is needed if the panel agrees. Do not bring 10 people. This is not a rally. I wasn't planning to. Good. Ma, what do I need to prepare? 3 things. What happened? What evidence supports it? What remedy you are asking for? And the proposal. Separate it. Zainab remembered Bode beneath the almond tree. Connected is not identical. My personal case and policy proposal are separate. Exactly. Grace paused. And Zainab? Yes, Ma. Do not go there to defeat Dr. Bode. Zainab frowned. I'm not. You are a little. She said nothing. Grace's voice softened. Go there to make it easy for reasonable people to agree with you. That became the rule for the next 7 days. Zainab prepared without turning the hearing into a courtroom drama in her head. She printed the clinic confirmation. She printed the hospital letter. She printed the call log. She printed her message to Simi, with the timestamp showing it had been sent before the examination began. She included the witness statement from the roadside shopkeeper. She removed anything that merely repeated something else. She created a 1-page timeline. No decoration, no emotional adjectives. Then she prepared answers to questions she did not like. Why did you not leave once other adults arrived? Because the injured woman was confused, had no relative present, and the responding clinic staff asked for someone who witnessed the accident and to accompany her during transfer. I remained until hospital staff had taken over and had my details. Why should the university treat your decision differently from voluntary lateness? Because there is independent evidence that the delay arose from an emergency intervention, not a personal scheduling choice. Why should fairness to you outweigh fairness to students who arrived on time? It should not. I am asking for a controlled deferred assessment under equivalent academic standards, not additional marks or reduced requirements. Could this create abuse? Any process can be abused. That is why verification matters. She practiced aloud. At first, every answer became a speech. She cut them. Shorter, clearer. Tayo made her rehearse during a lunch break. He played the worst panel member in Nigeria. So you are saying because you are a good person, university should change rule? No. I am saying a documented emergency should trigger review. Why did you not let other people help? They were present, but the injured woman had no relative there and medical requested a witness during transfer. Maybe you wanted to miss the exam. Then I chose a very inconvenient way to do it. Tayo laughed. Do not say that one. I know. Say it in your face. What does that mean? Nothing. Continue. Ronks prepared too. When Zainab visited her 2 days before the hearing, the older woman had written 3 pages by hand. Zainab read the first paragraph and groaned. Ma. What? You wrote, on the fateful morning when death spread its wings near me. Ronke snatched the paper back. I taught literature before I became principal. It shows. It is beautiful. It is evidence, not WAC composition. Ronk glared. Bissy, listening from the dining table, began to laugh. Zainab took a clean sheet. Just say what you remember. I remember almost dying, Say you were hit by a motorcycle and were confused after the fall. Very dry. Perfect. Ronka sighed dramatically. They reduced 3 pages to half a page. At the end, Ronke added one sentence without asking permission. I did not know Zainab before that morning, and she had no reason to believe I could offer her any personal advantage. Zainab read it, then looked at Ronke. Keep that, she said. Ronke smiled. The night before the hearing, Zainab barely slept, not because she was imagining victory, because she could now see how easily the panel could say no without being evil. That was harder to fight. If they had been corrupt, she could condemn them. If they had been cruel, she could hate them. But they were likely to be people trying to protect a system from abuse. She needed to show them that refusing all discretion was also a kind of failure. At dawn, she ironed the orange blouse, then stared at it. Too much? She almost chose something else. Instead, she wore it. The blouse had caused enough trouble by existing. It could attend the hearing. She paired it with navy trousers and black flats, the same combination from the exam morning. The pale blue university lanyard hung at her chest. In her cream canvas bag were the records that had taken weeks to collect and months to matter. Musa called as she was leaving. Have you eaten? Yes. That answer was too fast. I ate bread. Bread is not food. It is literally food. After hearing, eat proper thing. Yes, Daddy. He paused. Do not be afraid. I'm not afraid. Then why are you talking so quickly? Zainab smiled. I have to go, Zainab. Yes? What you did that morning was not foolish. She stopped at the door. Musa continued. I still wish somebody else had stopped too. I still wish you wrote your exam. But if I tell you now that I wish you walked away from that woman, I would be lying. Zainab pressed her lips together. Thank you. Do not cry before meeting. Your face will swell. She laughed. Goodbye, Daddy. The review room was on the 2nd floor of the administration building. No audience waited outside. No cameras. No dramatic row of enemies. Just a rectangular table, a jug of water, printed files, and 6 adults who looked as if they had already attended too many meetings that week. Grace sat near one end. Dr. Bode sat across from Zainab. He wore the cobalt blue shirt again. For one ridiculous second, Zainab wondered whether the man owned another color. Then the chair of the panel asked everyone to settle. Zainab placed both feet flat on the floor. Her hands were cold. The chair began. Miss Bello, this panel has reviewed your written submission. We are here to clarify the facts surrounding your missed examination and determine whether a deferred assessment is appropriate under the university's academic authority. Your separate process proposal has also been circulated, but we will treat that as a different matter. Zainab nodded. Yes, Ma. Good. Start from the beginning. Briefly. Briefly. Months of her life compressed into one word. Zainab looked at the timeline in front of her. Then she looked up. On the morning of my final environmental risk assessment paper, I was traveling to campus when an elderly woman was struck by a motorcycle near the university. I stopped, called the university clinic emergency desk, assisted until the response team arrived, and accompanied the woman during transfer because she was confused, had no relative present, and staff needed a witness account. By the time hospital staff took over and I returned to campus, I was outside the permitted entry window. The chair nodded. And you accept that you arrived after the entry window? Yes. You are not disputing Dr. Adeyemi's authority to refuse late entry at the hall? Zainab glanced at Bode. No. I am disputing what should happen after that refusal, when the lateness is tied to a documented emergency. One panel member looked up from his notes. That was the first small shift. The hearing had begun. The first questions were easy because they were about facts. What time had Zainab called the clinic? The record showed it. When had the response vehicle arrived? The clinic's dispatch note gave the approximate window. When had Ronka been registered at the hospital? The hospital letter confirmed it. When had Zainab messaged her coursemate? Before the examination began. When had she reached the faculty building? Too late. Nobody argued about that part. The difficult questions started when the panel moved from what happened to what should count. A senior lecturer from another faculty adjusted his glasses and looked at Zainab. Miss Bello, there were other adults at the scene. Yes, sir. Why was your continued presence necessary? Zainab had rehearsed the answer. It still felt different when a real person asked it. At first, people were more focused on the motorcycle rider than on the injured woman. After I called for help, I stayed because she was confused and asked me not to leave. When clinic staff arrived, they needed information from somebody who had seen the accident, and she had no relative there. I went with her during transfer and left once hospital staff had taken over and had my contact details. So there was a point at which you chose to continue beyond the initial emergency call. Yes. Knowing you had an examination. Yes. The lecturer folded his hands. That choice is central to this matter. Zainab nodded. It is. Dr. Bode spoke for the first time. That is the concern I raised from the beginning. His voice was calm, no triumph in it. The university must be careful not to create a standard where any voluntary intervention outside campus becomes grounds for a special examination. Students make choices every day. Some are admirable. That does not automatically convert them into academic exemptions. Zainab's fingers tightened beneath the table. Grace noticed. She did not rescue her. Good. Zainab did not need rescuing. The chair turned to her. Response? Zainab took one breath. I agree that admirable behavior should not automatically create an exemption. Dr. Bode looked at her. The senior lecturer looked at her too. Zainab continued. If I had stopped to help somebody carry groceries, I could not call that an emergency because the action was kind. If I chose to attend a community event and arrived late, I could not call that an emergency because the event was useful. The question should be whether there was a genuine urgent situation, whether my involvement is independently verifiable, and whether the academic standard can be preserved through a deferred assessment. The chair made a note. What academic advantage are you asking for? None. You would have more study time than your classmates had before the original paper. There it was. Zainab had expected that one. Yes, Ma. That cannot be undone. And how is that fair? It is not identical. The chair looked up. Zainab continued carefully. A deferred paper can use a different examination under the same learning outcomes and normal moderation. I should not see the original questions. I should not receive easier marking. I should not receive extra marks because of what happened. But I also don't think the only way to preserve fairness is to treat a documented emergency as if it were ordinary lateness. Dr. Bode leaned forward. The difficulty is where the line is drawn. Yes. Sir, and who draws it? Yes. And whether the university then spends its time investigating every claim made after an examination. Yes. He looked almost irritated by her agreement. So your proposal does not solve the burden? No, sir, it controls it. That landed. Zainab opened the separate one-page proposal. I am not suggesting every claim gets a hearing like this. I am suggesting a basic filter. A student reports the emergency as soon as reasonably possible. The student submits independent records where they exist. The first review checks whether the claim meets a threshold before it moves further. That is less burden than improvising from zero every time. One panel member, an examination administrator, turned a page. You use the term independent record. Give examples without turning this into an exhaustive list. A clinic dispatch confirmation. Hospital attendance confirmation. Police or emergency response reference where relevant. Employer or institutional record. A witness statement when it can be checked. The exact type depends on the event. And if there is no record, then the case is harder to verify. Harder or impossible? Harder. I don't think I should pretend every genuine emergency produces paperwork. The administrator nodded slightly. Good answer, Zainab thought. Not because she knew it would win. Because it was true. The chair turned to Dr. Bode. Dr. Adeyemi, your written note says you do not dispute that Miss Bello arrived from an emergency situation based on the documentation now available. I do not. Your concern is precedent and assessment integrity. Explain. Bode rested both hands on the table. During the last 2 examination cycles, we have dealt with several late or absent students who presented stories after the fact. Some were genuine, some were not. One student claimed a family emergency that could not be substantiated. Another submitted a document with dates that did not match the examination. Once staff begin making exceptions informally, students stop seeing a rule. They see a negotiation. Zainab listened. This was the part of Bode she had not seen at the examination door. He was not protecting the pleasure of saying no. He was protecting a boundary because he had watched people push it. That did not make his sentence to her right, but it made him human. Bode continued. If this panel authorizes a deferred sitting, I want the basis stated clearly. Not she did a good deed. Not we felt sorry for her. The basis must be a verified emergency, documented timing, and a decision under proper authority. Zainab looked at him. For the first time, his position sounded uncomfortably close to hers. The chair noticed too. So you do not oppose deferred assessment in principle. I oppose informal exception. And Miss Bello's proposal is, in effect, an attempt to formalize review. Bode glanced at the paper in front of him. It is an attempt. Zainab nearly smiled. From Bode, that was almost a compliment. The panel called Ronke in for factual clarification. She entered slowly, her left arm now free of bandages, but still stiff at the elbow. She wore a violet Ankara dress again, though not the same one from the accident day, and a teal headscarf tied neatly around her grey braids. Zainab stood instinctively. Ronke frowned at her. Sit down. You are the one on trial, not me. The chair's mouth twitched. Mrs. Coker, thank you for coming. This is not a trial. Good. I have already dressed too well for court. Even Dr. Bode looked down for a moment, hiding something close to a smile. The chair asked Ronke to describe only what she remembered and what she had learned directly from medical staff afterward. Ronke did exactly that. No fateful wings of death, no speeches. She remembered being struck. She remembered confusion. She remembered Zainab's voice. She remembered trying to stand and being told to remain still. She remembered gripping Zainab's wrist. I asked her not to leave me, Ronke said. Zainab looked down at her hands. The chair asked, Did you know she had an examination? No. When did you learn? After I returned home. Did she indicate at the scene that she expected any benefit from assisting you? Ronke gave the question a long look. Madam, she did not even know who I was. Please answer directly. Do you have any connection to this university that could influence this decision? Ronke almost laughed. No. I am a retired secondary school principal. My influence now is mostly over whether my grandchildren wash plates when they visit. A few people around the table smiled. The chair thanked her. Ronke began to stand, then paused. May I say one thing? The chair considered it. One brief statement. Ronke turned toward the panel. I spent many years enforcing rules on students. I know what lies sound like. I also know what fear of lies can do to a truthful person. That is all. She left. Nobody wrote for several seconds. Then the examination administrator asked Zainab the hardest question of the morning. If this panel denies your personal request, but recommends review of the policy gap you identified, would you still support the proposal? Zainab's first thought was no. Not because she meant it, because she was tired. Tired of being noble at personal expense. Tired of people asking whether she could accept another loss in the name of principle. She looked at Grace. Grace's face gave nothing. She looked at Bode. Nothing there either. So Zainab answered for herself. Yes. The administrator watched her. Why? Because another student should not have to invent this process after the emergency has already damaged them. And if it does nothing for you, Zainab swallowed, then it still solves the problem I found. The room became very quiet. The chair leaned back. Thank you. Dr. Bode looked at Zainab for several seconds. Then he glanced down at his notes. The hearing moved into procedural discussion. Zainab listened while people used phrases like equivalent assessment, academic authority, verification threshold, and administrative feasibility. At one point, the chair asked her to wait outside while the panel considered the case. The corridor was empty. Of course it was. All the important moments in Zainab's university life seemed to happen in corridors where nobody could do anything useful. She sat on a bench. Her phone showed 3 messages from Musa. Have they started? Are you there? Eat something, she replied only. Waiting. Tayo had also sent a message. Did you defeat university? Zainab typed. Not a boxing match. His reply came immediately. Then why you dress orange? She laughed out loud. A door opened behind her. Dr. Bode stepped out. Zainab stopped laughing. He closed the door gently. Panel is still discussing. She nodded. Sir. He stood near the window. For a moment neither spoke. Then Bode said, The year before you entered university, I authorized a late student to write after the permitted time. Zainab looked at him. He continued. The explanation sounded credible. Later, we learned he had received information about the paper from another student who finished early from a different arrangement. It became a disciplinary matter. People asked why I ignored the entry rule. Zainab said nothing. That is not your case, Bode added. No, sir. I know that now. She looked at him. He rubbed one finger along the edge of a folder. The morning you came to the hall, I knew only that you were very late, and that an accident had been reported to me through another student. I could not verify anything at that moment. I understand why you did not open the door. Bode nodded. But not what I said. No. He looked through the window toward the campus road. I should not have made your decision sound morally careless. There it was. Not grand. Not public. No kneeling. Just a sentence that had taken him months to reach. Zainab let it sit. Then she said, Thank you, sir. Bode glanced at her orange blouse. You wore the same color. Everybody remembers this blouse. It is difficult not to. She laughed. He almost did. Then the door opened again. Dr. Dayemi? Miss Bello? Please come in. The chair waited until they sat. Zainab placed her hands on her knees. The chair began with the part Zainab already knew. The panel finds that you arrived outside the permitted examination entry period. Dr. Adeyemi's refusal to admit you into the ongoing examination was therefore procedurally reasonable at the time, given the information available. Zainab's stomach tightened. The chair continued. However, the panel also finds that your subsequent documentation establishes a credible emergency timeline, and that your absence was materially connected to assisting an injured person during emergency transfer. Zainab stopped breathing for a second. Accordingly, the panel will recommend that you be granted a deferred sitting under a fresh examination paper and normal assessment conditions. The room did not explode. Nobody clapped. Zainab simply put one hand over her mouth. The chair was still speaking. Miss Bello. Yes, ma. There is more. Zainab lowered her hand. Your process proposal raises a legitimate administrative gap. We are not adopting your document as policy today. That would require wider review. But student affairs and examination administrations will develop a formal invention for documented emergencies occurring around assessment periods, using your proposal as one input. One input. Not Zainab's law, not a plaque with her name. Something better. A real process beginning where there had been none she could see. The chair folded her hands. Do you understand the decision? Zainab nodded. Yes, ma. Any question? When will the deferred examination be scheduled? The administrator smiled faintly. Of course, that is your first question. It has been a long few months. You will receive formal communication. It will not be tomorrow. I understand. The chair looked around the table. Then we are done. Zainab stood. Dr. Bode gathered his papers. As she reached the door, he said, Miss Bello. She turned. He held her gaze. Every choice has consequences. The old sentence struck the air between them. Zainab could feel Grace watching. Bode continued, including the choice to examine a rule after it fails somebody. Zainab's mouth lifted. Yes, sir. Then she gave him the answer she had carried for months. My choice already had consequences. Bode nodded once. So did mine. That was enough. Outside the building, Zainab called her father. He answered before the first ring finished. What happened? They approved a deferred sitting. Silence. Daddy? Say it again. They approved it. Musa made a sound Zainab had never heard from him before. Half laugh, half shout. Somebody in his workshop asked what happened. Musa ignored them. When? I don't have the date yet. Did they cancel the delay? No. Will you graduate immediately? No. Will they give you back the job? No. Musa went quiet. Zainab smiled. You are checking whether we have actually won. I am an engineer of reality. You repair sewing machines. Same thing. She laughed. Musa's voice softened. My daughter? Yes? You will write that paper. Yes. Then we have won enough for today. Zainab ended the call and stood in the shade outside the administration building. Students walked past, carrying backpacks and plastic food containers. A groundsman dragged a hose across a patch of dry grass. Somewhere nearby, a generator started with an ugly cough. The campus had not changed because of her hearing. That was fine. Real change rarely announced itself properly. Sometimes it began as minutes in a meeting nobody else would ever read. The formal exam date came 12 days later, 6 weeks away. Zainab hated the waiting. Then she became grateful for it, because her brain had apparently thrown half the course into a locked cupboard while she was fighting the university. She studied after work. Not every night went well. Some evenings she returned from the warehouse, opened a textbook, and woke 40 minutes later with her cheek against a page about risk matrices. On those nights, she slept. No heroics. On better nights, Simi joined her by video call and tested her with past questions. Define risk assessment. You graduated. Leave me alone. Define it, Zainab answered. Good. Next. Explain hierarchy of controls. You are enjoying this. A little. At the warehouse, Tayo adjusted her shifts during the final week before the paper. I am not doing favor, he warned. Of course not. If you fail, you will embarrass safety department. Your support is moving. I try. The young worker who had cut his palm weeks earlier passed the desk and raised the healed hand. Madam Exam, read your book. Zainab threw a rolled piece of paper at him. The warehouse had become something she had not expected, not a consolation prize. A place where she was useful. That distinction mattered. 3 days before the deferred paper, Tayo called her into his office. He slid a document across the desk. Zainab did not touch it immediately. What did I do? Why do you assume trouble? You called me into office. I call people for good things. When? Today. She looked down. It was an expression of interest for a graduate-level safety and compliance role, conditional on her completing her degree and the company's normal employment process. Zainab read the first paragraph twice. Tayo, do not cry. I will withdraw it. I'm not crying. Your eyes are doing meeting. She laughed and wiped under one eye. Why? Tayo shrugged. You notice things. You write clearly when you stop trying to sound like lawyer. Workers listen to you because you help move the box after reporting the box. And you know when you don't know something. Zainab looked at the paper again. This is not because of the woman I helped. Tayo frowned. I did not meet the woman. If she is paying salary, tell her to pay me too. Zainab laughed. Thank you. It is not an offer yet. Finish your exam. Yes, sir. Do not call me, sir. It makes me feel responsible. The morning of the deferred examination was quieter than the first one. No voice note from Musa because he had called the night before and repeated every instruction a father could invent. Sleep, eat, carry pens. Leave early. Do not rescue anybody. He had stopped after saying the last one, then quickly added, I am joking. Zainab had answered, Are you? He had groaned. Now she dressed in a pale blue blouse instead of orange. The orange one could rest. She put 3 pens into her cream canvas bag, then a 4th. She checked her student card, checked the examination notice, checked the time. When she stepped outside, she stopped at the gate of her building. For a moment she listened. Traffic, a radio. A woman calling a child back inside to collect something forgotten. Ordinary morning. Zainab walked to the road. She arrived on campus 1 hour early. Under the almond tree, she sat with her bag between her feet and breathed. This time, the plan allowed it. Dr. Bode passed on his way into the building. He saw her. You are early. Very no emergencies? Zainab looked around. Please don't invite one. Bode's mouth moved. A real smile this time. Fair. He went inside. When the examination hall opened, Zainab entered with the other students scheduled for deferred or authorized assessments that day. There were only a few of them. Nobody knew her story. Nobody needed to. An invigilator checked her ID and pointed to her seat. Zainab sat. A fresh examination booklet lay upside down on the desk. Not the paper her classmates had written months earlier. A different paper. Same course. Same standard. She placed 1 pen on the desk. Then another, because Musa would somehow know if she did not. When the invigilator told them to begin, Zainab turned the paper over. The first question was on risk assessment in a workplace setting. She stared at it, then laughed once under her breath. The invigilator looked at her. Problem? No, ma. Zainab picked up her pen. No problem, she wrote. Not perfectly, not like a woman whose suffering had given her supernatural intelligence. There were 2 questions she had to return to. One section made her doubt a definition she had known for years. Her wrist ached halfway through. She kept going. At the end, she checked her work until the final instruction to stop. Then she put down the pen. For a few seconds, she did not move. Months earlier, a door had closed before she could enter. Now an invigilator collected her answer booklet from the desk. That was all. Zainab walked outside. Simi was waiting under the almond tree with 2 bottles of malt. You are dramatic, Zainab said. I came to celebrate. You don't know whether I passed. You wrote. Today we celebrate verbs. Later we celebrate results. Zainab accepted a bottle. They drank beneath the tree. After a while, Simi asked, If you could go back to that morning, would you still stop? Zainab looked toward the campus road. The answer was no longer simple. She thought about her father counting money. The lost job. The graduation photographs she had stood beside instead of inside. The warehouse. Ronxi's hand around her wrist. Grace's pencil marks. Bodhi's closed door. The hearing. The fresh examination paper. I would stop, she said. Simi nodded. Zainab added, but I would shout louder for other people to help. Simi laughed. That is growth. That is experience. The result arrived 3 weeks later while Zainab was inspecting a storage area. Her phone buzzed inside her pocket. She ignored it. The forklift lane had been narrowed by incoming stock, and she was arguing with a supervisor about temporary markings. When the issue was resolved, she remembered the phone. There was an email from the university. She opened it beside a stack of sealed cartons. Her grade was there, a strong pass. Not perfect. She did not need perfect. She sat on an empty pallet and stared at the screen. Tayo found her 5 minutes later. Why are you sitting on company property like homeless philosopher? Zainab held up the phone. I passed. Tayo's face opened. Ah, Madam Graduate. He shouted across the warehouse before she could stop him. She passed. Workers turned. Someone clapped. The young man with the healed palm whistled. A forklift driver leaned out and called, so now she will write us up with degree. Laughter spread across the floor. Zainab covered her face. Tayo. What? You said you don't like drama. I said many things. Her phone began ringing. Musa. Of course, she answered. How did you know? Portal. You have my portal password? You gave it to me in 2nd year. Daddy. You passed. You should not be checking my portal. You passed. That is not the point. You passed. Zainab started laughing. Musa laughed too. Then his voice cracked. He cleared his throat aggressively, as if emotion were something stuck in the pipe. Your mother would have been proud. This time, he finished the sentence. Zainab looked down at the concrete floor. I know. A month later, the university held a smaller completion ceremony for students, whose results had been finalized outside the main graduation cycle. It was not as large as Simi's graduation. There were fewer gowns, fewer families, fewer people fighting photographers for space. Musa arrived too early in his deep forest green kaftan. He complained that the chairs were arranged badly. Then he took photographs of every chair. Ronke came with Bisi. She walked without assistance now, though she still moved carefully when climbing steps. The teal headscarf returned. Zainab saw her from across the hall and waved. Ronke pointed at Zainab's graduation gown. Better color than the orange thing. You will never leave that blouse alone, never. After the ceremony, Ronke handed Zainab a narrow box. Zainab immediately frowned. Ma. Before you refuse, open it. Inside lay a black fountain pen with a worn silver clip. Not new, not expensive looking, used. Zainab picked it up carefully. What is this? I used that pen for years when I was a principal. Signed admission letters, staff warnings, certificates, too many things. Bisi laughed. She also signed my punishment letter with it once. You deserved it, Ronke said. Zainab turned the pen between her fingers. Why are you giving it to me? Because money made you suspicious. Zainab smiled. And this won't. This is an old pen. If you refuse it, I will insult you. Musa, standing beside them, said, Collect the pen. I have suffered enough. Everybody laughed. Zainab closed the box. Thank you, Ma. Ronke touched her cheek. No, thank you. This time Zainab did not argue. Dr. Bode appeared near the faculty group a few minutes later. He was not wearing cobalt blue. Zainab noticed immediately. White shirt. She almost congratulated him. Instead, she said, Good afternoon, sir. Congratulations, Miss Bello. Thank you. He looked at the pen box in her hand. Gift? From Mrs. Coker. Bode nodded. Then he said, Student Affairs circulated a draft emergency assessment procedure yesterday. Zainab's attention sharpened. Already? Draft. Do not celebrate a document before committees finish eating it. She laughed. What does it include? Early notification where possible. Evidence guidance. Review responsibility. Protection against misuse. And no diagnosis requirement. No diagnosis requirement where attendance confirmation or other verification is sufficient. Zainab smiled. Bode looked at her. Your proposal was stronger than your petition. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds like another way of saying my petition was weak. It was emotional in places. I deleted the emotional parts, not all. You are impossible. Bode almost smiled. Yet here you are. He extended his hand. Zainab shook it. There was no dramatic reconciliation. She would never like what he had said to her that morning. He would probably never become a relaxed man about examination rules. They did not need either thing to happen. Respect was enough. Outside the hall, Musa asked Ronka to pose for a photograph with Zainab. Ronka refused at first because she said the sun was too strong. Then she adjusted her headscarf and posed for 6 photographs. Musa took 12. In the final one, Zainab stood between them, holding the old pen box. Nobody in the picture looked wealthy. Nobody looked powerful. Nobody needed to. The warehouse made its offer official 2 weeks later. Safety and compliance officer. Entry level. Proper probation period. Proper reporting line. Proper work. Zainab accepted. On her first day in the new role, Tayo placed a fresh inspection register on her desk. Now that you have degree, your handwriting should improve. It will not. I regret promoting you. You did not promote me. HR hired me. Same difference. No, Tayo groaned. 4 years of university and you are still arguing same difference. Because it is still different. Work moved on. So did the university. The draft emergency process did not become policy overnight. There were revisions, questions. People changed language. Somebody wanted a narrower evidence list. Grace objected. Examination administration changed the reporting timeline. Departments asked who would carry the workload. Zainab heard about pieces of it from Grace, but she was no longer at the center. That was healthy. If a process only worked while one injured person stood in the room demanding it, then it was not much of a process. The final version of the emergency review procedure reached Zainab as a PDF on a Tuesday afternoon. Grace sent it with one line. See what survived committee. Zainab opened the document expecting to recognize her own words. Most of them were gone. The university had changed the title, rearranged the steps, added definitions, removed one example, and inserted 2 levels of responsibility she had never suggested. At first, she felt strangely offended. Then she read it again. The important parts were still there. A student facing a genuine emergency around an assessment could report it through a defined channel. Evidence could be submitted afterward, where prior notice was impossible. Review would distinguish verification from automatic approval. Staff at an examination venue were not expected to conduct an investigation at the door. Private medical details were not required when simpler confirmation was enough. False documents remained a disciplinary issue. And there was one paragraph Zainab had not written at all. Where an emergency involved assisting another person, the reviewing body should consider whether the student's continued involvement was reasonable in the circumstances. Not merely whether another person was physically present. Zainab read that paragraph 3 times. Then she called Grace. Who wrote this part? Which part? The part about assisting another person. Grace made her wait. Doctor. A DME suggested the wording during review. Zainab sat back in her warehouse chair. Dr. Bode? There is only one Dr. Adiemi in this conversation. Zainab smiled. He changed his mind. No, he refined his position. That sounds like lecturer language for changing your mind. Do not start trouble. Zainab looked at the document again. Will it actually be used? It has been approved for implementation. Whether people use it well is another question. Policies do not grow hands. I know. Good. Then stop admiring the PDF like it is a newborn child. Zainab laughed. After the call, she saved the document and returned to work. There was no ceremony for it, no photograph, no plaque saying a student had suffered here, so somebody finally fixed the gap. That suited her. The point was never to leave her name behind. The point was to leave a door where she had once found a wall. Several months after the accident, Grace invited Zainab back to campus for a student safety awareness session. You people finally want me now that I have escaped, Zainab said on the phone. We want somebody who can speak about emergency response without frightening students or pretending everybody should become a paramedic. That is very specific. I have attended bad safety talks. Zainab agreed. The session was held in a lecture room, not an auditorium. About 40 students came. Some because they were interested. Some because a lecturer had encouraged them. At least 3 came because there were refreshments. Zainab respected all motivations. She did not tell her entire story. She spoke about simple things. Protect yourself first. Do not create a second casualty. Call for appropriate help early. Do not crowd an injured person. Do not force food, drink, or medication into somebody whose condition you do not understand. Control obvious bleeding with clean material when you can do so safely. Do not pretend basic first aid knowledge makes you a doctor. Give responders clear information. And when an emergency disrupts work or school, document what can reasonably be documented without invading another person's privacy. A student in the second row raised his hand. What if helping somebody makes you late for exam? A few people laughed. Zainab looked toward the back of the room. Grace stood against the wall with her arms folded. Dr. Bode was not there. Good. The answer did not need him, Zainab said. Then help the person. But don't become the only helper if you can avoid it. Call others in. Share the responsibility. Emergencies are not supposed to be a one-person performance. The student nodded. Another asked, Will the school excuse you? Zainab smiled. There is now a clearer documented emergency review process. That does not mean automatic excuse. It means there is a defined place for the facts to be considered. That was all she said. No speech about destiny, no declaration that kindness always comes back. Because sometimes it did not. Sometimes you did the right thing and still lost something. The purpose of a decent community was not to pretend otherwise. It was to make sure doing the right thing did not carry avoidable punishment. After the session, Zainab packed her notes into the same cream canvas bag she had carried on the morning of the accident. The bag had a blue ink stain inside from the broken pen. She had stopped trying to clean it. Grace walked with her toward the main gate. You still have that bag? It works. You earn salary now. That is why I know the value of money. Grace laughed. At the gate, they separated. Zainab had taken only a few steps along the roadside when she heard somebody shout, Hold her! Her body reacted before her mind did. She turned. An older food vendor near the campus entrance had gone weak at the knees and dropped onto a low stool. Her tray tilted. Sachets of water slid onto the ground. For one sharp second, the old morning came back, the motorcycle horn, the violet dress. Ronka's fingers around her wrist, the examination slip. Zainab moved toward the vendor. Then she stopped. 2 students were already there. One steadied the woman without trying to drag her upright. Another had moved the tray out of the walkway and was calling campus support. A third student told the gathering crowd, Give her space, if please. Someone offered the woman a bottle of water. The first student said, Wait. Let them assess her first. Zainab stood a few meters away. The students did not know she was watching. They did not need her. Grace had stopped behind her. Neither woman spoke. A campus response staff member arrived and took over. The crowd opened. The food vendor was still conscious. One of the students stayed long enough to give the responder his details. Then another student took a photograph of the contact information posted at the gate, in case they needed it later. Not of the woman, of the information. Zainab smiled. Grace looked at her. What? Nothing. You are smiling at nothing? Zainab adjusted the strap of her cream bag. They handled it. Yes. I was about to run there. I saw. But they handled it. Grace nodded toward the road. Then go to work before you become late. Zainab laughed. Yes, Ma. She crossed when the road was clear. On the other side, she looked back once. The vendor was being attended to. The students had stepped aside. Traffic moved again. Nothing about the scene looked like a miracle. That was exactly why it mattered. Months earlier, Zainab had been one frightened student, kneeling beside a stranger while everybody waited for somebody else to take responsibility. Now responsibility had spread into a clinic record, into a hearing, into a warehouse habit, into a university procedure, into the hands of students who did not know her name. There are choices that reward us quickly, and choices that do not. There are also rules written to protect fairness that can become unfair when nobody is willing to examine what happens at their edges. Zainab never believed people should abandon their future whenever a stranger needed help. She learned something harder than that. Help should not depend on one person destroying herself to prove she has a good heart. A good system makes room for people to act like human beings. At the bus stop, Zainab opened Ronki's old fountain pen box inside her bag just to check that the pen was still there. It was. She closed the box, heard her bus conductor calling her route, and climbed aboard.